Welcome to episode 40 of the West Aurora 129 podcast. I'm Superintendent Michael Smith, and we're kicking off a new season of the podcast, highlighting the remarkable building leadership in West Aurora School District 129. Let's start with Nancy Hill Elementary. Originally built in 1888 and named after a beloved teacher and principal in 1928. Fast forward to today, where a new building stands. Nancy Hill is led by Principal Beth Smith. Welcome, Beth.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Next up, Smith Elementary School, which was built in 1963 and named after Gertrude Scott Smith, who served the district for 46 years as a teacher, dean, assistant principal, and principal. Smith Elementary School is led by Principal Dr. Pete Clabough. Welcome, Pete.
Thank you, Dr. Smith. Glad to be here.
Glad to have you both. And I would be remiss if I didn't mention the unique connection between the two of you. Beth, you've been leading Hill for a few years now. We're not going to say how long to respect any side comments that might be percolating in people's minds. And you're seen as I'm going to get myself in trouble, a fairly seasoned principal. But once upon a time, you were still finding your footing under the leadership of Pete at Smith School. Is that correct?
It sure is. I was at Smith for 2 years as Pete's assistant principal.
Nice. So that's where we're going to kick things off. Talk to me about that partnership. Tell me about that experience working together.
I was fortunate. I knew Beth was a teacher, a strong teacher leader prior to joining us at Smith, and that definitely showed right off the get-go. I would say her biggest strength was her relationships with staff, students, parents. She's just a very likable person, and that shined through. And people wanted to perform for her because she was just connected to them in such a positive way that I think that had a huge effect on influencing people's efforts, people's ability to progress and learn from her, from each other, and she just did a remarkable job.
That's great. Oh, all right. Beth?
Thank you.
Oh, my goodness. I think I'm sitting with royalty here the way he described you. This is pretty impressive.
I wouldn't be where I am without Dr. Clabough. He is an amazing mentor, and I have to share that out of his first 3 APs have all actually become principals in the district, which is amazing. I don't know if any other leaders can boast that stat, but just an amazing leader and helped me grow and be ready to take on my own building. He included me in every aspect of building leadership, whether it was school improvement, budgeting, scheduling, relationship building, just the mentoring. We co-led that building, and I got experiences that I would not necessarily have gotten without that. And the experience that he brought with him, he's just amazing at kind of sharing his perspective, his thoughts. He's super thoughtful, and I still find myself thinking, what would Pete do?
We all do that.
I know. I should get a bracelet or something that says it.
Boy.
That's right.
I got to write this down.
That's how we That's how we approach our days.
Sure, I'll remind you of that.
Well, obviously, the two of you have demonstrated quite a connection after spending time together, specifically working as principal, assistant principal, and now currently as principal colleagues. And it's just an honor to have you both here, sharing your knowledge and your insight. Speaking of, Beth, you mentioned a couple things that you learned as an assistant principal with the things that Pete showed you. Let's have our audience learn a little bit about that. What does a day in the life of a principal look like?
So I'll go first on that. I can tell you it's difficult to explain because it's never the same. So I guess I would describe it as there's several different aspects. You have your students, you have your staff, you have your parents, the community, and those partnerships, and the interactions that you have with all of those different aspects. You have your list of things that you would like to accomplish as you plan for the day, and some days you'll get through some of those things on that list, and other days you have not gotten through one thing on that list of things to do, depending on how the day goes. But no matter what you're doing, as long as you're keeping students number one in your decision making, throughout the meetings that you have, throughout whatever may occur on any given day as a principal, if you keep students first and in your priorities, you'll end the day in a good spot.
That's a good way to frame how we approach our days. Beth, what do you think? What does it look like over there at Hill?
So I compare it to a choose your own adventure, but I think the learning environment chooses the adventure for you throughout the day. Similar to what Dr. Clabough said, you have your game plan and you just have to adapt based on what the needs are in the building, in the district, in the community at the time. And so you have your standard, getting into rooms and getting outside and interacting with kids during lunch and recess and meeting with teachers and evaluations and all of those more scheduled routine tasks. And then you also have what pops up through the day, support that's needed, whether it's social, emotional, academic, building coverage. And so it really is just what takes priority, and you make sure that people are put first and that everyone's needs are met throughout the day.
I find myself interested at times to show up at schools either at the beginning or the end, just to watch arrival and dismissal. Folks don't realize the work that goes into bringing hundreds of students into a single location safely, orderly, so that they can start their day off on the right foot. And I know for both of you, you've established some nice routines. You talked about getting into classrooms. So there's an aspect of, even though you're a building principal, there's an aspect of still being the instructional leader in the building. Can you talk to me about what that looks like a little bit?
Yeah, sure. So we set our school improvement goals for the year at the beginning of each year. And one of those goals always has to do with student progress and learning. And we as principals ultimately are responsible for that progress that they're making. So we have to be instructional leaders, and getting into classrooms is key to that, and not just for an evaluative purpose, if we have a teacher that we're evaluating officially, but getting to all classrooms and being a coach for everybody.
Sure.
Showing them or talking to them about strategies, talking to them about asking them questions. How did it go? What are you thinking? What are your next steps in your learning?
Awesome. Beth, what do you think? I know you came to the administrative role after a number of years in the classroom. So putting on that different hat, what does that instructional leader piece look like for you?
It's really staying connected to what we're asking teachers to do to support kids. That we have a lot of things on our list that need to happen, can happen, and you can't make decisions or recommendations or have expectations if you don't know what you're talking about. If you don't, it's really about boots on the ground. And similarly, thinking about, you talked about when you arrive at buildings. So I'm remembering you stopped by one day and, it's linked to not even just teachers, but just every role in the building. So Dr. Smith walks in, I'm covering the health office because the nurse is on lunch, and the AP was covering something else, and a kid's throwing up and somebody's coming in. Dr. Smith just put gloves on. He's like, what do you need? And that really is what happens in the building. And so it's walking into classrooms. What do teachers need? And unless you have eyes on that, you can't really make the best decisions because you're kind of flying blind, right?
And oftentimes our community does not see the many hats that you wear, which is why we want to have these conversations, to take a look inside. Someone signed up that day, thought you're just going to be a principal. Well, I'm going to be a nurse, I'm going to be a counselor, I'm going to be a traffic cop. I mean, whatever the day calls for is the hat that you put on. And speaking of, there are challenges. We know that as it relates to education, but we would be remiss if we didn't pause and just take a moment to reflect on what is the best part, would you say, of being a principal?
I would say just being part of an amazing community, just seeing and being part of families supporting their kids growing up, and just that bigger picture, the community that is built. And that's what I love about elementary is you've got these kids for hopefully 6 years, and you really see how much they grow.
Sure.
Right now the kids that are finishing 5th grade right now are the ones I started with in kindergarten. And so it's just that really neat connection of, I can picture them walking or running through the hallways as 5-year-olds. And now they're, we're preparing for middle school. So it's just watching that growth and seeing how much they learn and develop is amazing.
That's awesome. Pete, what do you think?
Yeah, so along those same lines, for me, it's I'm quantitative in nature and setting goals for our student growth, and to the feeling that I get, that I see our staff get, and I see our students get as our teachers and our students take ownership in their learning. When we are able to reach a goal, that we've set for ourselves. All the interactions that happen during that journey is so enjoyable for me.
Sure.
And then to be able to celebrate it at the end is really cool. So,
well, and I know, Beth, you talked about the community. Pete, as a longstanding principal at Smith, you all do a lot to connect and welcome your communities. You lead schools that are very diverse. What is it that you do, or how do you go about welcoming your students and their families as you try to build that culture or community within your buildings?
So I'll go. Yeah, I'll kind of pick up from there. We just had our annual Smith Fest. So I've been at Smith for a long time, and this was a tradition that was happening long before I came. Dr. Smith, you were there at some point before me, and that event was happening. And I use that event just because it happens at the beginning of every year in September, and it's amazing the alumni that come back to that event.
Oh, that's awesome.
And all of the parents and the kids get so excited about it. We have a huge turnout every year, and we just open our doors. We open our school to the entire community to come have some fun for a night. At Smith, so everyone's welcome. We're an open doors school, and
just a nice way to kick things off.
Nice thing to kick things off, and then get a good start to everyone feeling welcome at Smith.
What do you think, Beth?
Similarly, we really work to partner with our families to hear what their needs are, as far as how they feel connected to the building. So whether that's increasing our communication, what ways do we communicate so that families can hear what we're doing and share in those celebrations, how they connect with teachers so that they're partners in their kids' experiences. We try to have events throughout the year. We keep them very accessible. So we will alter the different times so that depending on what shift you work, you're able to attend something. We keep them little to no cost so that families can come. They can, we'll have food trucks. They can choose to have dinner with us, or they can choose to have dinner before they come. We keep all the events family friendly where their kids can be part of the event with the parents.
Sure. Adjusting to family shift times is a great connection. Pete talking about the multi-generational impact and I used to go to Smith, and now I'm coming back to Smith Fest and seeing the next generation come through. That's tremendous. And it represents your efforts to try and connect and understand the local context of the schools that you're looking to lead. And I asked that question on purpose. I'm talking about families because we'd like to talk to you a little bit about yours. Beth, I'll start with you. Your husband's a leader in our district, and you have sons, one graduated and the other working his way through our system. So very holistic approach to your engagement with West Aurora High School. What's that been like to both work for and then as a family be that connected to West Aurora School District?
It has had a huge positive impact on our family. We have felt so connected to the experiences that our boys have had. My husband actually followed in his footsteps at Hill, and just watching him as a building leader it was like having an in-house mentor. Just watching him build those relationships and connect with families and prioritize what is important in education and in the community. I learned a ton and still do. And I pick his brain a lot. And I think we're fortunate because we both have the same background. I think that's probably a challenge for people married to non-educators.
Sure.
Because I don't know of any other field that is the same. And so it's...
We call those opportunities in the business, right?
Yes.
We are provided with many opportunities. And Pete, for you bring a little bit of a different perspective. You've taught, you've coached, you've worked in the administration at the secondary level. From a family perspective, your children have been highly successful in athletics. So you've seen things from a secondary standpoint. You've seen excellence on display with your family, and you're bringing that perspective and holding that standard as you lead an elementary building. So why elementary?
Yes.
How did that perspective in your life experience adjust to how you're leading Smith School?
Yeah, no, it's been really cool, and I think it's been beneficial to have those different levels of experience from the high school to the middle school and then elementary. I think I've had definite times where I've been able to paint a picture at the elementary level for where students are going.
And
that's
good.
What they're going to be able to experience from that transition to 5th to 6th grade. what are some of those experiences those students are going to be able to have when they go to the high school level, and what it takes, and what it's going to take. And from being at the secondary level, what I realized when I went to elementary is, man, these foundational skills that are required for students to develop at a very young age
100%.
are so important.
100%.
And then that responsibility falls on us. So
That's good.
you need to, really plan effectively, and, make sure everybody's on the same page, moving in the right direction.
Sure. And having fun along the way, right?
Absolutely.
So we have talked about defining ownership amongst our leadership team, are outlining what that looks like, feels like, what it sounds like. This next question is a call to reflect and then act upon the reality that each staff member matters and must do the work they are called to in support of the education of our district students. So under that heading of ownership, a question I'll be asking all of the leaders that I speak to this season: what does ownership look like as a building principal?
I think it comes down to deciding and co-deciding what culture do our students and staff deserve, and then how do we encourage that culture to grow and flourish. That between staffing and spending and modeling, really focusing all of the efforts, having a clear vision of, again, what our students and staff in our community deserve. And our ownership is owning that lens of where decisions and how decisions are made through that lens. And that was something that I picked up in my time at Smith, was every decision that Dr. Clabough made, how does this filter through our vision?
That's good.
Laser focus. I mean, it was somebody coming and asking to purchase something. Okay, how is it linked to our vision? And I think that's the ownership piece of, we have to own what we want our building, our collective building to be, and what our specific role is in developing that.
It's not Beth's way. That collective commitment becomes the boundary with which decisions are made. I like that. That's good. Pete, what do you think?
I think Beth stole my thunder.
But she's good. Yeah. She learned a lot from you. How about that? Do you see see what I did there?
I see what she
did. You get
the
credit for all that.
Yeah. So, I think, and you said something, Dr. Smith, regarding collective efforts and that collective collaboration and belief. And I think it starts with the building principle, from that ownership, is that belief that all students can learn, and that we're gonna do absolutely everything we possibly can to make sure that is happening.
That's good.
And to have that embedded in, to Beth's point, embedded in our vision and everything that we do, and have it matriculate all the way down to teacher ownership and student ownership in their own learning, and the importance of that and what it does for the culture has such a big impact on student learning. I think that it puts a sense of accountability on us as principals when we start off with that belief that all students can learn, and that collective efficacy that then is developed through the collaboration of staff and the ownership that our own students have in their own learning.
We're not just making it up. There's intentionality behind what we're doing every day.
Correct.
That's good.
Yes.
That's good. So both of you are obviously proud leaders of your respective schools. And as we look to close our time with you, I just want to give space for you to do a little bragging about all the wonderful things, but we're just going to limit you to one. So what is it that you would say that you're most proud of at Hill Elementary School?
So I would say our overall community, the diversity and voices that our students, staff, and families bring to the building. We speak many languages, we come from many backgrounds, and we have, similar to what Dr. Clabough shared with Smith Fest, we have families that choose to stay in the community so that their children will go there. We have the kids of former students. We have staff that have gone to Hill and gone out in the world and have returned to whether continue their profession, or start or finish their profession at Hill. And so that's meaningful when parents and staff want to have the same experience, or their children have the same experience that they had. I think that's really powerful, and it speaks to the work that happens at Hill.
Also speaks to that accountability too. They believe and can tell a story of their experience, and they're holding us accountable to provide the same for their children, grandchildren, as you said. I like that. I love that. Pete, what do you think?
So I think for me, it's I'm proud of the progress our students make year to year at Smith. About the time that Mrs. Smith started at Smith, we've had a lot to celebrate. It started in those years, actually, where we have made progress, student progress and growth in their learning. And it's been represented through the data and the goals that we've set. And I am super, super proud of our students, and not only our students, but the way our staff and all members of the staff, not just the teaching teams, but everybody. It takes everybody and supporting one another and the collaboration and collective efficacy that they have in their collaboration and decision making. And within that culture and just having that culture, that I think is the reason it leads to the successes that our students have had at Smith.
That's good. And a good reminder not to ever forget to take time to celebrate. And that's part of what we want to do through these conversations is not only articulate the hard work that you as building leaders are doing, but really celebrate what's going on, because there are stories to be told that often fly under the radar because people focus on things that catch their attention. And unfortunately, that's something we can deal with as educators. But we know, being on the inside, our students are doing phenomenal things, and we're so proud of them. And you all represent that in the buildings that you leave. So thank you very much for taking a few minutes to hang with us. So with that brings us to our close. And I want to say, Beth, Pete, thank you very much for spending some time with us, telling the stories of your journeys and the story of the schools that you lead. So thank you very much.
You're welcome. Thanks for having us, Dr. Smith. It's a pleasure.
Absolutely. It's always a welcome opportunity to be able to share what's happening at Hill School and in the district.
And we won't tell anyone. You set the bar pretty high. So, the word's out now. So there's a standard. No, thank you guys again. Take care.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Please remember that you can find us wherever you get your podcasts, including Apple Podcasts, YouTube Music, SoundCloud, and the TuneIn Radio app. I would encourage you to subscribe to our broadcast and stay tuned for next month's episode featuring the principals of Washington and Jewell Middle Schools.